where
to.
you are. Good day to you from snowy New England. Another powder layer laid on top of the wet layer we've had the last several days. It's a beautiful morning. And I was out shoveling earlier thinking to myself, well, this is philosophical. Wonder what we're going to do today. Gentlemen, we have some heavy lifting. I welcome my good friend Gordon Chang at Gordon G. Chang and Steve Yates of the Heritage Foundation. The heavy lifting consists of the day after the State of the Union message. I believe it's over. Is he still talking? No, no, he's not talking anymore. The Financial Times and the Telegraph both point to game show credibility, an interesting choice of modifiers. I'm going to go to first your thoughts about the president's presentation about China. I missed it the first few times, and what that means for the conditions in East Asia now. This is the president's first State of the Union message in his second term. What's different from the first term that you heard? Gordon, what did you hear last night that was different from the first term?
We didn't hear very much about China at all. There were some references about tariffs, and then he talked about China's and Russia's military. But you really had to pay attention to it. And people are saying that Trump has gone soft on China. And my sense, and I don't do domestic politics, but my sense is that he should listen to and watch what Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi did. She stood up to China and she won a landslide election on February 8th. What I mentioned this because in 2020, Trump also went quiet on China, and we know what happened then. So I think he's making the same mistake twice.
Steve, we're going to begin momentarily, but your thoughts about the China presentation last night at the State of the Union.
Well, I think, John, it was really a question of priorities. And what he had to do was to somewhat shock the system and change some of the narratives. The way the situation in Minneapolis had played out had captured too much of establishment media, and it was affecting people's perceptions of a fundamental issue. What are illegal migrants doing in the United States? And does the United States have the authority and the will to expel those who are violent out of our country? And so there are some extremely visceral examples of trying to change that narrative. The China narrative that he has is very, very clear, but it's one people are not used to, and it's debatable how effective it is, but it almost entirely comes around what are we doing that doesn't talk directly about China, but puts us in a more competitive position relative to China, puts us in a stronger position relative to China. I think there are lots of what he said, those pieces that would make that case. But I would concede it's a contestable notion. Can you have a president not define a threat directly and publicly and still rally a country around the idea of your purpose in that form of engagement, especially as President Trump very frequently engages in flowery rhetoric about his counterpart? It can lead people to think, as Gordon was noting, that it sounds like it's being soft. And so I think both of these are necessary parts of that whole. But the objective of the State of the Union, I thought, was 100% domestic politics last
We'll
night.
begin immediately, gentlemen, and I'm going to read a headline that I have from London that is suggestive. Japan to deploy missiles on island near Taiwan. And we also have a headline from London, Friedrich Merz meets China's Xi Jinping. I'll read both of those, and then we'll speak of the State of the Union. Thank you. 5, 4, 3. This is 9 minutes to open the show tonight. Making of 5, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Batchelor. The day after the State of the Union, I welcome my colleague and friend Gordon Chang at Gordon G. Chang, and our good colleague at the Heritage Foundation, Steve Yates. Gentlemen, headlines from London in these last hours. Friedrich Merz meets China's Xi Jinping as trade tensions mount. That's the Chancellor of Germany shaking hands with Xi Jinping. And then this from London, The Telegraph. Japan to deploy missiles on island near Taiwan. Subhead, Tokyo to expand military capabilities on potential front line with China in next 5 years. Gordon, your thoughts about Merz in Beijing, Takeichi Sanai bolstering the defenses in the First Island chain, and last night's speech. All together, Gordon.
What we see is Trump going soft on China, sort of trying to put the issue in the background. This sort of mimics what he did in 2020, where he actually sort of did not discuss the important points about China. The reason I mention this, John, is on January 31, Las Vegas SWAT and federal agents found what appears to be the second Chinese biological weapons facility in the United States, suggesting that the Chinese regime plans a mass attack on the American people. And I think that that deserved some attention in the State of the Union, because we're talking about the lives of many Americans. If nothing happens, people will forget. But if there's an attack on the United States from China this year, people are going to say that President Trump did not attend to what was the most critical national security threat.
Steve, a very good day to you. We have Germany in Beijing and Tokyo on the front line building defenses in the First Island chain. History doesn't repeat itself, Steve, but it does rhyme. It is striking that the two major combatants of the first half of the 20th century are here now and playing defense in the first half of the 21st century. Your measure of China's position with regard Europe and with regard Japan?
Well, there's, I think, a different level of mugging by reality going on in East Asia versus in Europe. It's been a much slower process in Europe, but in both cases, neither of the leaders of these countries, their predecessors, wanted to be pulled into a conflict. They believed in the idea of peaceful evolution. They believed in the idea of global institutions changing China more than China changing the globe. And I think that Merz is now speaking much, much more candidly that the threat to the structure of the German economy goes beyond electric vehicles, and that China is playing a much more significant strategic role to the negative for Germany. And so I hear things that show the dawning of maybe a different way of thinking very, very late in the game. With Prime Minister Takeichi, I think she's been plain and clear from the get-go. I think the first leader of our age to be as absolutely clear about where the challenge is and where her country has to be. And it needs to be a normal nation, which completely throws off the World War II ghosts of the past that well earned. It was a terrible era, but it's a long time in the past. And now, of course, if you're a normal nation, you should be ready, willing, and able to put deterrent wherever you need on your sovereign territory. And so she's behaving, I think, in a way that has been a long time coming. But I see these two leaders inching in the direction of a correct position, with Europe somewhat behind Japan.
Gordon, you have a question for Steve.
Steve, Prime Minister Takeichi is the only leader of a major free world country willing to talk in realistic tones about China. And that means people like Merz, Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, and now Merz are trooping over to Beijing, sort of acting like vassals. This can't be good for the world, can it? I mean, here we have Japan actually being the tough one, and the United States, a far stronger society, acting as it's submissive to the Chinese. What's going on here?
Well, I see sort of two layers in what the United States is doing. The European theater, I think, unfortunately, there's not enough substance below the rhetoric at this point. That really, really needs to change. for the United States, there is this rhetorical softness. There's a kind of a cancer in our leadership way of thinking with regard to China, where we soft pedal differences as we approach some kind of a meeting or a summit. But China never does that. And in case in point right now, we have China speaking openly about providing very lethal missiles to Iran in the buildup of what's anticipated to be an American-led or allied action against Iran to keep the nuclear program in check. And so we have decisions about should leaders of Taiwan be able to visit the United States at different times. And it's just not convenient in 2026 because we have a visit or negotiations with China. That kind of mentality really does need to stop. And you would think the perfect leader to stop that would be Donald Trump, because he literally doesn't do this with any other account in the world.
Steve, the puzzle here about confrontation with China. We've gone through in quick order China in the background, then Wolf Warrior, and now how would you characterize the present conditions that China encourages around the world?
Well, China is very willfully enabling the crises that the United States is being called upon to invest tremendous time to manage and negotiate some kind of a settlement to. So we are at the advent of a fifth year of the Russia's war against Ukraine, and China remains very central in that equation. We have the evolution of the broader Middle East from the Abraham Accords 1.0 into something that might be bigger and more durable potentially. And China is very central to whether this succeeds or drags on. And then, of course, in our own hemisphere, China is not absent from the turmoil that has been experienced in Venezuela, Mexico, and Cuba, and also Greenland, and Canada, for that matter. The list is long. We're in all these areas where we're seeking a grand reset to a golden age. The role of China is there everywhere, making it more difficult. And that, I think, is the 21st century role that China is playing. They don't solve problems, but they can make them very hard for others, and they try to use that leverage for you to submit to them.
Gordon, you have a question for Steve.
Steve, you talked about an interesting distinction about being rhetorically very much soft on the surface, but being confronting China under the surface. And that's actually an important point, because we see this, for instance, in American actions that do undercut Chinese interests indirectly. The most important one, of course, is Iran these days, that you just pointed out. Where do you think this is going in terms of China versus the United States with regard to Iran?
Well, I think it would be an absolute game changer, as they might say, if these material defense articles that go to Iran somehow end up on the wrong end of an exchange with the United States. That, I think, would have the potential to completely change President Trump's perception of what Xi Jinping's leadership and his military have been doing. Now, I think there's plenty of things that should have had that same effect. I think that COVID should have had that effect. I think fentanyl should have had that effect. The unfair manufacturing, which is a pillar of Trumpism, should have had that effect. But I think that there's something just an added layer of visceral. If this material assistance to Iran somehow results in casualties for the United States as it tries to secure this alternative path to peace and prosperity in the Middle East. Outside of that, I think that it's theatrics, but the ghost fleets that have been blocked, the sanctions busting that China has engaged in the past, I think that's frustrated by what the president has put into play in that region. And so hopefully we are containing those malign influences as we do the real work.
Steve Yates of the Heritage Foundation, Gordon Chang at Gordon G. Chang. I'm John Batchelor. Thank you, Mr. Yates. Those missiles in the Okinawa chain, very interesting move by Tokyo. Very interesting.
Yeah, more to come. I agree with Gordon. I hope that there's a mind meld that Takaichi can have. It's the best hope we've got.
Well, talk is cheap, but it costs missiles to buy rum, and she's buying rum here.
I'm all for it.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Excellent sound system. All right, Gordon, we're turning to the fleet, I believe. Where are we going?
Rebecca Grant.
Okay. I will welcome Rebecca. Good morning, Rebecca. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Gordon.
Good morning, Rebecca.
We've been at sea and we're now landlubbers again, and we are keen on your guidance. The speech last night we've just established did not address itself directly to the Chinese threat, nor indirectly, as far as I could hear. I welcome other thoughts on that matter. The question is, how did China hear it in terms of the military buildup around Iran, which, Gordon, it was a $400 billion deal between China and Iran for oil, wasn't it? Wasn't that the right number?
A strategic partnership agreement for 25 years, inked in 2021. The Chinese have not committed the money at the pace that the Iranians think, but clearly China has been backing Iran in all sorts of things. And to answer your question, I think the Chinese are thinking that Trump is afraid of them. They know what they're doing to the United States, and for Trump not to say it, the Chinese are thinking, boy, this guy is a vassal.
Rebecca, I mentioned that the fleet is arrayed now in a warfighting stance. So I'll start there and then ask your thoughts about how you understand the Chinese relationship to Iran. Iran is defenseless as of last summer. I don't know what they build up now. There was an aberrant headline in London yesterday saying that the Chinese were sending anti-air missiles that can weave as they close in on an aircraft, some piece of technology. Suggesting, of course, that China's not out of this, that it's a supplier for the Iranian regime. So I'll lay all that out and we can talk about the fleet's deployment, which is both aggressive and vulnerable to bad actors.
Yes, I thought I saw an anti-ship missile, but I'll talk about both anti-ship and anti-air missiles. China does have some pretty spectacular missiles, that's for sure. So.
Right. I did not see anything fresh on anti-ship. This was anti-air last night.
Anti-air, okay, gotcha.
And it was a surprise, but these things happen in
Yeah.
editorial meetings in London.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
All righty.
8.5 minutes. London, I love your headlines. Don't take it wrong. We write nowhere near the excitement in those headlines.
So true.
In the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal would say some new technology has been shipped to Iran, and that'd be as far as they want to go before it's confirmed. Okay, 5. Thank you, Rebecca. 4, 3. Where are we going? Making of 2, 1. I'm John Batchelor, Gordon Chang, my colleague and co-host, and we're very pleased to turn to the fleet and our interlocutor, our fleet whisperer, Rebecca Grant, Vice President of the Lexington Institute. I'm looking at the fleet arrayed around Iran, supporting the president's remarks that Iran is a sinister presence and must be in some fashion contained. There is a negotiation underway. I believe they meet again in these next hours. The news for weeks has been discouraging about that negotiation reaching a conclusion. So the fleet. Rebecca, a very good day to you. There was a headline from London yesterday. I did not see a follow-up again, that China is shipping anti-air missiles to Iran. Something about new technology that weaves as it closes in on an aircraft. At the same time, we know China has long partnered with Iran for strategic elements such as oil and other aspects of the production line in Iran. Right now, how does the fleet regard the Chinese presence in the Islamic Republic of Iran? Is it significant that China quietly is supporting the Iranian regime, given the strength of the Chinese fleet versus the weakness of the Iranian fleet? Good day to you.
Yes, the U.S. Navy and U.S. Central Command are keeping a very, very close eye on China. The U.S. Navy fleet is arrayed, and along with land-based air power, they really have Iran bottled up from the Eastern Med all the way through to the North Arabian Gulf. There are no less than 7 destroyers deployed at the moment. I've really never seen anything like it. That's both a missile defense shield and, of course, the possibility of offensive strike options, and not something small and one time like Midnight Hammer. This would be possibly a sustained campaign. But Central Command has watched China all along, and they have seen there are Chinese ships near Djibouti that watch the fleet. There are reports that the Chinese share satellite tracking information with Iran, and we know for sure that the Iranians take delivery from China of ships that carry sodium perchlorate and other precursor chemicals that the Iranians use to mix fuel for their solid fueled rocket motors for ballistic missiles. So China is all over this place without even getting into the oil sales. No question, China is supporting Iran.
Gordon, you have a question for Rebecca.
Rebecca, there are also reports that China has been supplying radars to Iran. Now, we know that in Venezuela on January 3, that Chinese radars and integrated command systems somehow did not see 150 or more American aircraft in or near Venezuelan airspace. But this is no time to crow, because I assume, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, I assume that the Chinese are sending better radars to the Iranians than the ones the Venezuelans had. Either from what you know or what you guess, what do you think?
China has excellent air defense systems. What they could do for Iran, and we don't know, is either supply a better grade of radar or kind of more like a software update that enables Iran to track U.S. forces based on the most recent experience. But Gordon, John, let me tell you, here's what we have going over there. Spotted 12 F-16 CJs with their angry kitten pods. These are wild weasels that are masters at outfoxing surface-to-air missiles. Nothing China can send Iran is going to interfere with that. Of course, our stealth aircraft, we've seen both F-35s, land-based, and F-22s moving in. The Lincoln's Carrier Air Wing 9 carries F-35Cs. These are stealthy, radar-evading aircraft. And don't forget what the B-2, of course, did last summer. So the U.S. has deployed plenty of forces that can, frankly, march straight into Iranian airspace. It is a combat zone. There are risks, but the preponderance of firepower and tactics and experience absolutely rests with the U.S. in this case, and Iran should keep that in mind.
I'm told that what the White House would favor is a reproduction of the success in Caracas. I don't know that it includes rendition. It could include something that the Telegraph and I believe the London Times talked about last weekend, which is decapitation. The fleet that's arrayed is much more than raid fleet. It is a campaign fleet, as you correctly identify for me, a campaign fleet. Therefore, are we looking at the scale of combat that would go on for weeks? Is that what that means, or would it be accomplished quickly?
It is a campaign fleet, but I think it will happen quickly. The big difference here is whereas Operation Midnight Hammer was one night, one target set, what I believe is that the previous targets for Iran involve the missile defense complex, the missile production, space launch, and maybe leadership. That's a much bigger target set, and it's going to need strikes, bomb damage assessment, and then restrikes. The size of the forces deployed give the president the option to carry out a campaign over a matter of days. A great example here is Operation Rough Rider, done last spring by the Navy and the Air Force against the Houthis. That went on from mid-March through late April, attacking targets in Yemen. I think a strike in Iran would be quicker. I hope it would have the great joint force coordination that we saw with Venezuela, which was just simply amazing. But there's no question whether it's to put pressure on the negotiators or to get ready to carry it out. What's deployed there is the ability to do a multi-day restrike campaign against a larger set of Iranian targets.
Gordon, you have a question.
Operation Midnight Hammer, the operation against Venezuela, the one you talked about, result in no American losses. Have we become casualty averse?
Oh, no question. But I'm telling you, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, will have briefed all the risks to the president and across the Secretary of War. That's going to include some worst case casualty estimates. We've learned that there were a couple helicopter crewmen that were wounded during the Venezuela raid. We don't know the details, but there's always a chance. There are formidable defensive systems in Iran. They're not well coordinated, but things can happen, whether it's operationally or due to a combat environment. So, you've got to keep that in mind. And I'm sure for President Trump, that is uppermost in his mind. I think we can get in and out of there with no combat losses. But as the president, he has to weigh that possibility. And as Americans, we have to be prepared for it. That's 40,000 forces there. Iran's going to try to strike back. We have good missile defenses in place, but that is a combat zone.
Less than a minute, Rebecca. I'm going to be difficult. Have we got victory disease?
We have the victory capability. And I think the hesitation here, letting the negotiations play out, shows that, in fact, we're taking this military operation very seriously. That said, we cannot let Iran have a nuclear capability. We can't let them have this missile capability. It's essential for peace in the Middle East to sort out that regime. And I think that we have the right assessment of our capabilities to take on an Iranian target set if they're called to do that.
To explain, victory disease is what the Japanese suffered right before and right after Midway. Rebecca Grant, Vice President, Lexington Institute, very helpful on the fleet, very helpful on how the fleet hears our adversaries. Gordon Chang at Gordon G. Chang. I'm John Batchelor. Thank you, Rebecca. Very helpful.
Thank you both. Enjoyed it. Take care.
We'll be back to you when they shoot.
Good. Absolutely. Love talking with you. Thanks. Bye.
All right, Gordon. We were all, the way it was put to me by our friend Blaine, the pistol is cocked.
Yep.
I've been entertaining with different voices for several days. Oh, here's Charles. Good day,
Charles.
Good morning.
Well, I'm keen on hearing about your skiing. All's well? You haven't fallen? Everything's okay?
No, I haven't fallen. I mean, skiing is easier than it used to be because they groom the hills. So there aren't these big moguls that you can go flying over that were something of my youth. Go zipping over a mogul and without knowing it, and suddenly find myself flying in the air and either land in a heap or continue on down the hill. But today that won't happen, and the equipment's much better. So, I mean, while everything else in the world is going to hell, actually skiing has improved, and the snowmaking. They're able to create hills when they have difficulty. But actually, this winter has been exceptionally good. We've had enough snow, and it hasn't been too cold.
Wonderful report. Gordon, where do you want to go? I mean, there's so many directions with Charles. Where do you want to start?
Charles, do you want to talk about your upcoming testimony at the, is it House of Commons?
Yes, House of Commons International Trade Committee study of Canada's recent trade agreement with China.
Oh, thank you for sending that, Charles. When is the presentation? What day?
Tomorrow morning.
May I give that detail?
Oh yes, it's on the Parliament website, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Canada-U.S. Relations will also be questioned. And anyway, I'm hoping to turn things around. I mean, I feel it's my last. It's an opportunity to try and get the government to back off the concessions to China. I mean, one big concession is allowing the Chinese police to cooperate with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in sharing data and what they refer to as best practices. What it really means is tell us how it is you catch our spies so that we can do something about that.
I don't know. We're not doing anything about it as far as I can tell.
Well, I mean, the U.S. does arrest people and make them accountable. Canada has failed to do that.
There is a video package on Bloomberg. Did I mention this to you, Gordon? The video package about a young man who was recruited by Minister of State Security right out of college or right out of graduate program in engineering. specializing in aerospace engineering. And they recruited him in a job fair in Beijing or Shanghai, one or the other. And he started boasting to people how he was Minister of State Security and look at all these $100 bills that let me have. And
Mm.
is it cool? I'm going to be a spy, making videos of this
Mhm.
and going to the US, eventually entering into a graduate program somewhere in Chicago. And he was on a path with a handler to go into aerospace, because I learned from this Bloomberg package that China's not really good at reverse engineering jet engines. It turns out you need more than the plans. You need a feel for it. And then the FBI set him up, and he fell for it. He was jailed, and then at the end of the Biden administration, they exchanged him and some others who had been detained for Americans or someone like Americans who had been detained by the Chinese. So it felt, Charles, as if it was a game that was being played out by, real versions of Carla and Smiley. That's what it felt like.
There's a Jamestown report that just came out that shows that the number of these proxy organizations, United Front Work Department affiliated organization in Canada is about 10 times to the number in the United States by population. So the degree of infiltration is much, much higher in Canada than any other advanced country.
Does Canada hesitate because of the accusation of prejudice when you're dealing with a Chinese national who has secondary English language and is enrolled in an aerospace postgraduate program in Chicago? Does Canada blink that we shouldn't profile people just because they fit the profile?
Yes, I mean that's the Chinese propaganda, is to say that these are racist actions and designed to constrain China's rightful rise to power and unfairly inhibiting China from freely participating in academic exchange and so on. And that line is picked up by these proxy organizations and publicized. But I mean, we have people who are really very open in their full support for the Chinese regime that are not subject to accountability or sanction or really investigation as to see whether they are receiving benefits from the Chinese regime. Up to now, we still don't have the equivalent of a FARA. So it is pretty much open field for Chinese espionage and influence operations in Canada. And I think the reason that the government is not acting on this is because of what we call elite capture. So many senior elites are involved in activities relating to Chinese business networks that give them a conflict of interest. And there's also anticipated rewards. If you're a cabinet minister, a senior civil servant, and you don't blot your copybook by actively constraining China's espionage and influence and other activities in Canada, then you will find yourself rewarded after retirement with cushy law firm appointments and boards and business opportunities. And so the system seems to be working very well from the Chinese point of view, and increasing encroachment into Canada's society and economy by the PRC, which of course means ultimately a landmass which is greater than that of the United States on the U.S. northern border that could be enabled by the PRC.
All right,
I mean, this is the pattern. This is the pattern that it's going, and so far nothing to stop it. Although I'll make my best effort tomorrow in the Canadian House of Commons.
I will use quickly that version of the Bloomberg report because everybody can access it. It is discouraging that it seems so business as usual. Send in an obvious fall guy. He falls to the FBI. The FBI takes credibility for it, and we give him back. What was accomplished? I don't know. It's a game not unlike the Cold War, but it's not being written by a pseudonym named John Le Carre. As is Bloomberg reporting, not a fiction writer. All right, here we go. Thank you, Charles. We have 2 segments, and we're anticipating your presence you're in the big building. Is that where you go for the parliamentary meetings?
Yes, the West Block of the Parliament of Canada.
It's a gorgeous building. It feels like it was built by an alien civilization that landed here momentarily.
Yeah.
Something of the sandcastle about it.
Oh, I can see it from here as I speak to you. I can see the Peace Star, and it is an inspiration.
Oh, yes. And against the Ottawa River is right below it, so you can take a picture of both.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes.
5. Thank you, Charles. 5. And remember, we're here to sell books, okay? So,
Great. I have another book launch later this morning. It's my 4th of these book events.
wonderful. 5, 4. Gordon, all set? Hear everything perfectly?
Yep.
Oh, good. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Batchelor. Gordon Chang at Gordon G. Chang joins me, and we're off to Canada, to Ottawa, the capital of our Canadian brethren, for a conversation with the author and commentator and diplomat, Charles Burton. The book is The Beaver and the Dragon, and the relations between Ottawa and Beijing have been a moving story these months since the assertion of Mark Carney in the recent campaign to become prime minister that America is no longer a confident or trustworthy trade partner. We need to expand our business connections in other directions, including China. Though China is a small part of Canadian business now, there is the future. Charles, a very good day to you. My understanding is that Mark Carney sees a Canadian-China relationship as an answer to the Trump administration's apparent belligerence over trade. Is that accurate? Good day to you, Charles.
Yes, he's certainly responding to deep resentment on the part of Canadians over the Trump statements and some of the actions. So, a recent poll shows that 57% of Canadians would want to expand relations with China, regardless of what Mr. Trump may impose in retaliation. I mean, of course, we'll see what happens when that actually happens. But the drop in Canadians going to the United States, the number of Canadians applying for the Nexus program that allows easier access to the U.S. has dropped from 500,000 to 270,000. And of course, 85% of Canadians, according to the poll, are boycotting Canadian products, to U.S. products to the extent possible. So, he's appealing to the nationalist backlash against the Trump initiatives to make America great again, reshore the auto industry, and impose tariffs on Canadian exports into the United States. So I think from that point of view, Mr. Carney has gone to China and obtained one concession on reduction of tariffs on an important Canadian agricultural export to China, which is canola seeds, and but that only goes to the end of the year. Then the Chinese rewarded him with allowing visa-free access for Canadians to China. Although I do wonder if this will result in some naive Canadians being arrested at the border, because they won't be turned down for a visa; they'll actually appear on Chinese territory. And loosening of Chinese journalists' access to Canada, which, from my perspective, really means intelligence agents, and quite worrying, a memorandum of understanding between the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Chinese Ministry of Public Security, which has not been released publicly. But we understand that this requires that Canada share data with the Chinese on investigations that they may be doing in Canada, and that they exchange information on something called best practices. And this is clearly a concession to China in the sense that Canada, I don't think, needs to learn any best practices about the pervasive use of torture in incarceration and arbitrary incarceration that goes on in China and so on. So, with a promise of increased access to the Chinese market, Canada is making a number of concessions which strengthen China's ability to gain control of Canadian infrastructure, engage in espionage operations and influence operations, because the Canadian government will be reluctant to do anything about those things for fear of queering the ongoing MOUs and trade concessions. That being said, historically, Canada has in the past, under Prime Minister Chrétien 25 years ago, attempted to expand Canada's market share in China by downplaying concerns about China's human rights record and support for rogue regimes around the world and so on, and sending in massive trade missions of hundreds of people. And up to now, the total proportion of Canadian exports to China is 3.8%, which is substantially less than the combination of the European Union and the UK, which would be more like 11. And of course, with the United States, because of the integrated market through the North American Free Trade Agreement, we send about 70% of our exports to the US. So it's based on a promise that prime ministers have failed to achieve, which is to get the mercantilistic Chinese to agree to allow Canadian goods and services to freely compete in the Chinese market. That has never happened and is even less likely to happen now that Mr. Xi has an economic crisis on his hands and the imposition of more and more statist control of the economy. So the idea that Canada can somehow stick it to the Americans by moving over to the other superpower is based on a false myth, and the concessions that China is extracting from Canada are very dangerous to the future security of North America because of the leverage that greater economic integration allows the Chinese government over Canadians' concerns over, say, the Arctic, the transfer of dual-use military technologies to China, and the very strong influence operations against policymakers in Canada.
Gordon, you have a question for Charles.
Charles, yesterday I crossed into the United States at Buffalo, but before doing that, I went to the duty-free shop on the Canadian side, which is not quite as big as a Walmart, but is actually pretty large. And we were the only other couple in this huge facility. And this mimics what I've seen crossing from Canada into the US many times. It's just no commerce across that border where it once was a bustling facility. But so much for my travel plans. You're testifying tomorrow before the House of Commons in Ottawa. What are you going to say? And what do you think the reception's going to be to your comments?
Well, I mean, I certainly want to highlight that the Prime Minister's aspiration to diversify our trade dependence on the United States towards China is not going to, it's not practical. I mean, even if we increase trade by 50% from 3.8, we'd still only be up to, say, 5%. And of course, China wants in exchange greater access to the Canadian market. So it's based on a false premise. But I am more concerned about the fact that the Prime Minister has refused to release the text of the Memorandum of Understanding that he negotiated between the Chinese police and the Canadian National Police. And I am concerned about the freeing up of Chinese access by so-called journalists to Canada. We have had a number of instances where journalists have been seen near military facilities taking photographs and so on. So, I don't think that you have a single Chinese journalist who is not actually also acting for intelligence gathering purposes. And in general, I think that because the Chinese have put this time limits on the tariff relaxation on Canadian products, but also has the potential to impose other ones arbitrarily as they have a history of doing this. This is constraining Canada from addressing the problems of espionage, influence operations, and transfer of, through gray zone methods or through getting Chinese scholars into labs engaged in sensitive research of military technologies that could be used in a war against Canada. And of course, as we've discussed in this program, I'm very much opposed to Canada allowing Chinese EVs to be sold at a discount price in Canada because they further increase China's ability to gather critical data that could be used for sabotaging of infrastructure inside Canada if there is a kinetic war between China and the West over Taiwan or the South China Sea.
We're speaking to Charles Burton, the author of The Beaver and the Dragon, the backstory to Beijing-Ottawa conversations right now. Charles is going to commit himself to the Parliament's wisdom in these next hours. When we come back, what about the part that is not easily talked about? That is Chinese influence peddling and spying in Canada and the United States. What is to be done? Does Mr. Carney have a plan? Gordon Chang at Gordon G. Chang. I'm John Batchelor. I'm John Batchelor with my good colleagues, Gordon Chang, my co-host, and Charles Burton, the author of The Beaver and the Dragon, the story of the backstory so far of the relationship between Ottawa and Beijing over trade and national security. Charles is to testify, to commit, to present to the Parliament what can go wrong and why, with the present intention of the Carney government to increase trade, or at least rhetorically increase trade relations between Ottawa and Beijing. Charles, you have given very careful, detailed reports of the Chinese influence peddling and bad acting in Canada over many years. I mentioned that it's routine now in the United States to capture Chinese nationals who are working with the Ministry of State Security. I say this because there's a Bloomberg video package that everybody can access now about a young man graduating in university in China who was recruited at a job fair by the Ministry of State Security. And through the long and winding road, including lavishing him with $100 bills and extra treatment for his family, he wound up in Chicago at a graduate program in aerospace engineering because his intention was to steal as much as he could find, get a hold of jet engine production by the U.S. Apparently, China's opinion is that it's very poor at it, and the U.S. is good at it, despite their theft and reverse engineering. I tell that story quickly because it's going on all the time. It's business as usual. Does Mr. Carney speak to that fact, something that's been established in his parliament for some time?
In the election campaign, Mr. Carney did identify China as the greatest threat to Canadian security and sovereignty. Subsequently, he's done a severe reversal. 2 years ago, Canada developed what they call the Indo-Pacific strategy. And in that document, they identified China as an increasingly disruptive power. At the time, I felt that was rather weak and suggested strategic competitor or preferably strategic adversary. After Mr. Carney came into power, he acceded to the Chinese government's request that we start using Chinese language to characterize the relationship and declared that Canada and China have a strategic partnership. And when he was in the Great Hall of the People recently meeting with Xi Jinping, Mr. Carney made a reference to the New World Order, which is, of course, in that context, one would see as China's community of the common destiny of mankind scheme to make China the superpower hegemon over the entire planet. So it seems that in the interests of currying favor with China and getting trade advantages, which I think would, based on historical example, the advantages would accrue to very specific, influential Canadian businesses, but not to the Canadian economy as a whole. I don't expect we'd promote Canadian prosperity for ordinary people by selling a lot more stuff to China. I don't see the Chinese thinking in that direction. But the idea being that we should compromise with our strategic partner who believes that they have a relationship where Canada is supportive of China's overall geostrategic agenda in the world by not pursuing embarrassing cases of people that we believe are under the influence of China as agents of influence or attempting to constrain the government from developing policies to constrain China's espionage operations in Canada through ordinary spying, cyber espionage, or gray zone activities of collaborations with Canadians or inviting Canadian scientists with critical knowledge of dual use military available technologies to visit China and lecture the Chinese on what they know, because that doesn't really matter that much. And I think that when Mr. Carney announced that Canada and China have a strategic partnership, a lot of people in the security and intelligence agencies of Canada and people of Chinese origin, the diaspora communities, the persons of Uyghur and Tibetan origin, Mongolian origin, Falun Gong Chinese democracy activists feel betrayed that Mr. Carney's rhetoric seems to be suggesting an orientation of Canada towards China as our superpower patron, because of the Canadian public bad feeling towards the statements by Mr. Trump and the ongoing trade negotiations, which seem to be not reciprocal and fair from the public perception, but a desire to squeeze Canada to make America great. America referring to the United States, not North America.
Gordon, you have a question for Charles.
Charles, I'm going to put you in a difficult position. If you were an American, do you think that Canada should stay in the Five Eyes intelligence sharing consortium, or should the United States expel Canada?
That is a very significant concern about how safe can the data that's shared between Canada and China be. And we have had this outrageous case of Cameron Ortiz, a senior official in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, that initially was being charged with potentially, allegedly transferring secret data to the People's Republic of China. Mr. Ortiz is a fluent Mandarin speaker, but subsequently was imprisoned on the basis that he had been providing information to the manufacturers of a secure telephone system being used by international drug smugglers instead. So I think that this is a legitimate concern about if Canada is not going after people who are violating their commitment to maintaining Canadian secrets and those of our allies, then it does empower the people who might be inclined to betray the country and the Five Eyes to benefit from providing information to China. So it is a major concern. I think that it's something that obviously has to be examined carefully. And the idea that Canada might be out of the Five Eyes is not out of the way. It would be regrettable in the sense that Canada's north is a very significant strategic aspect of the security of North America, and if that falls into Chinese influence and leverage and control, that would, of course, threaten the United States. That's why we have NORAD and the other joint defense facilities up there. So it's a developing story, but I think it's not without some basis. And indeed, Canada's position in NATO might also be subject to some question.
Charles, the breakdown is on the basis of one person. One person. There will be a day when that one person is no longer in a position of authority. Is Canada looking to that day? We have a minute.
You mean a change in the prime ministership?
Change in the presidency.
Trump.
Oh, Trump. Well, yes. I mean, of course, a lot of people are saying that it's not about America. That America is still our strong ally. It's the issue is with the president, one person. That is a perspective, but it's very hard to separate the one from the other at this time, and
Yes.
we don't know what follows Mr. Trump.
Charles Burton presenting to the Parliament within these next hours the case that trade with Beijing not only is not a substitute, but is a danger to the Canadian people. Gordon Chang at Gordon G. Chang. I'm John Batchelor. Apology, Charles, I was too circumspect in my identification. I didn't want to use it.
Oh, I should have remembered. Anyway, it's been good to speak, although the topic just gets more and more. When are we going to do a life-affirming positive topic? Are there any?
Oh, I like the idea that we're playing at this level. I like it, Charles. It's well done. It's easy to say that there will be another day, and what you have to say tomorrow to the Parliament, they're going to agree with you, Charles.
I think they will. I mean, we'll see how. I mean, obviously, the government will be present there. I'm also wondering if there will be any disruption by agents of the Chinese regime proxies of my event later today, the book launch at the University of Ottawa. Will they attempt to try and, I don't know.
Well, if they've recruited more young men like in the Bloomberg package, anything's possible. Anything.
Yeah.
It's flabbergasting what the Chinese do clumsily. They're clumsy about it. I mean, they exercise no discipline whatsoever on this young man. He's boasting online about the money that state security is lavishing on me. I mean, it was nutty.
Mm-hmm.
And so clearly, the Minister of State Security, which has gone through a huge recruiting program, is not shy about what it does and believes, I guess they believe that it's okay.
Well, I mean, I've been approached by them with an offer of, I think it amounted to something like $2 million. But,
You're worth more than that, Charles. Hold on.
I feel that, $2 million for spending a lifetime in China as some sort of agent. I just don't see that in my future.
Yeah, tell them that Bo Xilai has a number of residents in Paris you'd be interested in.
But I mean, they do cast the net wide, and they even tried people like me, which is not likely to work out.
But they're good at it in general.
Yes.
And we cannot exclude the possibility that they have these zany instances of this guy in Bloomberg just to throw us off.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. I like it.
Yeah. I think that's it's a very, very sophisticated engagement on all sorts of levels.
Also, I see the vanity of the FBI in that package.
Yeah.
Let's not get started on that.
I just mentioned. All right, Charles.
Thank you.
We look forward to your debrief.
Charles,
I'll let you know. Yeah.
Did you post this Ottawa book launch on Twitter?
Yes, it's been posted on Twitter.
In your thread?
Yes. Yeah.
I'll amplify it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it starts at noon.
Where is it, Charles? What's the address in Ottawa? Because we have Canada listening.
It's at the Faculty of Social Sciences at the University of Ottawa, room 4007. That's a large lecture room.
Say again slowly.
Faculty of Social Sciences, University of Ottawa, room 4007. Come
Wonderful.
one, come all.
Wonderful.
And I think they're going to provide some sandwiches after.
Wonderful. Charles Burton, The Beaver and the Dragon. Gordon Chang at Gordon G. Chang. And we come to the end of the stream program. And I thank everybody for observing the making of Carrot Soup, the John Batchelor Show. There'll be more soon enough. And here comes the music. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, Charles.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure.